So, Retro Raji, this is originally was called the Mew Bridge. The reason why we called it the Mew Bridge, are you guys ready to open up your brains for the more you know? Originally, we needed to find a way, or they had found a way, to skip Thunderbird. If you think about what's required in Zelda II, playing the game casually, you have to beat all of the palaces, so that when you get to Great Palace, the barrier will disappear and you can enter. Well, because of the healer glitch, we can bypass the barrier. Now we don't need any of the other palaces. We don't have to beat a single other palace because we can bypass the barrier in Great Palace. So really, Great Palace is our only requirement in the any % run. So that's part one. Well, what do you need to get through Great Palace? Well, there's blocks that you have to break. So we're going to have to get the glove from Palace 2, which we do. There's blocks underneath us that you have to break. Okay, now we need downstab. So those are the things that we need. Well, if you're going to go through and play it naturally, you got to fight Thunderbird. In order to beat Thunderbird, you need all 8 magic containers. You have to level your magic up to, I don't even know what level, but you have to level your magic up. Maybe if you have 8, you don't need to level up that. It doesn't matter. But you have to get the Thunder Spell. And the Thunder Spell is way out. So the idea is, well, how can we skip Thunderbird? Well, someone found out that if you are in the HUD... Oh, I don't have enough magic for Fairy. I was just going to show you. Anyways, someone found out that if you are in the HUD up here, and this was an early glitch that was found, if you're in the HUD, you can cast Fairy and press up, and it'll screen wrap you. It'll essentially, anytime the Fairy exits the top of the screen or the bottom of the screen, essentially exits vertically, you will fall to the screen below you. Well, it happens to be from this bridge, the screen below us is where we go into Thunderbird. So we can screen wrap and land on the ceiling above where you go to Thunderbird. And that became the Thunderbird skip. But in order to skip Thunderbird, you actually have to wrap twice. So we need enough magic so that we can cast Fairy twice. But we also need to be able to cast Jump so that we can jump up high enough. So now the requirements for, in the, 5-6 years ago, in the any %, the requirement was 7 magic containers, magic 5, which is enough magic to get to this bridge, cast Jump, jump into the HUD, cast Fairy, screen wrap, and then in the next screen, cast Fairy again to screen wrap again. You're on the roof, so you don't need Jump again. And that was the requirement. It required the Jump spell, and it required a lot of magic. Well, as speedruns do, we eliminate as much as we can. So one of the things was, well, on this bridge, there are enemies. Right? Where are you? There it is. There he was. There he was right there. Yeah, there's Mews. There's those little Mews. So what we could do, Raji, was we didn't have to get as much magic because in this game, every time you kill 6 enemies of a particular variety, whether they're big enemies or small enemies, you have a chance for a magic drop. Those Mews are a small enemy. So now we can say, we don't need as much magic. We need just enough magic to cast Jump and Fairy, but we need to level our character up or collect a jar. So in the first rendition of this, we are going to level we're going to grab a jar, and then that's what we're going to do. We're going to cast Jump, we're going to grab a jar, and then we can use Fairy twice, and it allowed less magic. Then it was, we're going to cast Jump, and then collect a jar, and also level up, and we were able to have less magic. And it was this convoluted Mew Bridge where you needed the luck of a drop, and you needed all of these things, just so that we had enough for 2 fairies and the Jump spell. Oh, hold on. Excuse me. So then the next step was implemented, and this was implemented by Frost. Well, the Mew Bridge was sorted out. I did that about three years ago or so. I sorted out the Mew Bridge and optimized it to the best we could do. And the old Mew Bridge strats were awesome. They were so awesome, in fact, that the guys made a controller for me that had a little figure of me when I got the record, and a little figure of me with the Mew behind me chasing me because of the strategy that I came up with for the Mew Bridge. It was just a really freaking awesome thing that I kind of stumbled upon with the bridge. I had spent hours and hours and hours working on that Mew Bridge. So, next up, Frosted Pears, who had helped me with a lot of any percent Zelda II, Frosted Pears said, hey, I set something up with a task. Do you think that we could ever do this? And what he had set up was, he had spent hours and had set up with the task the bubbles to actually, one bubble doesn't put you high enough, but there's two bubbles in this bridge. And if you had one bubble and then the other bubble's pattern could push you up a little bit, and then the next bubble could push you up, the bubbles could technically push you high enough into the screen so that you could use Fairy without the jump spell. And now, yes, the jump spell doesn't save that much magic. So it's like, well, what does that really matter? To get the jump spell, we have to go into a cave. We have to collect the trophy. We have to exit back out. We have to go to the town. Not getting the jump spell saved like a minute or a minute and a half. I mean, it saved an incredible amount of time. So if we could find a way to have the bubbles boost us up high enough, all of a sudden it's like, this could be huge. But the bubbles are really particular on how they move, because when you enter this screen, bubbles bounce off of things and they bounce pretty quickly. And you move the screen and they bounce off of the screen that is moving based off of your location. So now our location is incredibly important to where we've moved the screen to where the bubbles are. Luckily, I had spent a ton of time learning how to manipulate bubbles, because in the no damage playthrough, we grind bubbles to get an earlier attack. And there's a room in Palace 1 that has 4 bubbles, and I was trying to get all 4 of those bubbles to line up in one spot so you could kill them, all 4 of them at the same time. We called it the quad bubble. And I had spent hours lining bubbles up. So I told Pears, I'm like, all right, I'll work on it. I will work on a way of trying to line the bubbles up so that they will push us up the screen. But the shitty part is, we needed to be able to kill one of the bubbles to level us up, because we still needed enough magic so that we could, just enough magic so that we could cast Fairy once, then get a level up to level us up so we could cast Fairy the next time. And that saved us having to get a bunch of magic containers. So, sorry, I'm losing track of where we are in the progression, but the setup needed to be so precise. Not only did you needed to be pushed up in the air, but you had to be pushed up in the air not too far. If you're pushed up too far, when you press Fairy, you're gonna screen wrap because you're up high enough. You needed to be low enough so that the Fairy didn't register. There's a spot between the HUD and the screen where if you cast Fairy, it won't register. You can't be too low, because if you're too low, you turn into a Fairy and then you can't cross the boundary into the HUD. You needed to be within a certain amount of pixels. We also needed to trap both bubbles within that small amount of pixels so that we could kill one of those. And if some way we could get all of this to work out, it could be a strategy. I got drunk one night and stared at this screen for 5 hours, and I came up with something that works. The strategy uses stabs at the beginning. C1. We use 2 stabs. 1 stab underneath the C in magic, another stab underneath the 1, and then as we move forward, we stab again as the bubble lines up horizontally or vertically with the bridge. I mean, the bubble will be right here on the bridge. And that's why when I start the screen, you hear me say C1 bridge. You've seen them all. Those are the first 3 setups. Now we need to pause the game so that we can select the fairy spell. At this point in time, you need to pause and have fairy. Not only does that set us up for the fairy spell that we have to use, pausing the game fixes the broken images caused by the healer glitch. So now we can see the bridge, and pausing right here allows us to see this block that we have to jump off of. We need to jump off of this block and then only break 1 block at a time as we go. We need to travel beyond the spot that we need to wrap from. That's another part of this. You can't just do this anywhere on the screen. You need to perform this screen wrap in a particular spot, and we need to go past that spot to spawn the bubbles in, and then we have to return. Well, this bridge is breaking underneath our feet as we're running on it. So we need to jump and only break 1 block at a time from here. And then there's a stab here and a stab there. Those stabs are to buffer your movement. Your movement moves the screen, which sets the bubbles up. The first stab here is not that particular. That stab. But you'll notice that the next stab is going to slow us down. We need to break the blocks as we're running by them. But if we stab too far to the right, like that, you'll notice I break the blocks, but the bubble hits me in the butt. If I stab too early, I'm going to break the blocks, and the bubble that's coming down towards the edge will go through. I need to run across the blocks, which will break them, but before they completely disappear, the bubble bounces. So this stab too early, the bubble doesn't bounce. This stab too late, the bubble hits us in the butt. This stab perfect, and the bubble bounces on the bricks as they disappear. Then we have to stab on this final block, the only block that we leave, and we have a very small window to stab so that this guy doesn't hit us in the head. The stab is right there. I think that's good. So he'll miss our head. And now, if you've done everything perfectly, and think about all of the things there. How the fuck did I ever come up with that? The statistically, stumbling upon this is ridiculous. So now that I'm here, the next bubble that comes across, I have to jump. If I jump on that bubble and I am frame perfect, I am guaranteed to be in the perfect spot. And I'll show you what that looks like. You win. Perfect. That's too early.
Holy cow.
That's too early. That's good, but it's 1 frame off. There it is. Right there, that's frame perfect. If I jump here, the other bubble will bounce all the way around, lift me up, and put me right here. When you're pressing A, it'll allow you to bounce a little higher. If I press select here, I can turn into a fairy. I am too low to be a fairy in the HUD, and I'm too low to be in a fairy in the on the screen. Now, you'll notice I used magic, but I'm just a little bit away from leveling up. I have cast fairy, but it hasn't registered. I'll use the magic, it'll fill up my magic, and then I can hold A, which will allow me to bounce a little higher, and I'll turn into a fairy, and I'll screen wrap. Now from here, I can cast fairy again. I can screen wrap again. If I didn't and I walked out of that room, I'd still have to fight Thunderbird. That's where the 2 fairy casts, the 2 wraps, allow us to get to the end of the game and get to Dark Link. Wow. I don't know. I don't know how this strategy ever became a thing other than just kind of luck. But that is the story of the Fizzy Lifting Bridge. That's what you get, Raji. You say, well, you waste time on the bubble kill, but we have to kill that bubble, and we save a minute and a half not getting the jump spell. That bubble takes 30 seconds to kill. It is well worth the time. We still save a minute.